Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Today, we're jumping back into the saga of Kevin in a Big Rig. These stories have been brought to us by Strong Bad Jr. and there are 3 previous videos on the channel that you should probably go and listen to first before listening to this one. They're at the top of the description down below, go check them out and then come on back over here. Don't worry, we'll wait for you. With that out of the way, let's get into Kevin in a Big Rig Part 7, Flashpoint. Let's jump right in. Hello again everyone, and welcome to another episode of Kevin in a Big Rig. As always, a big thank you to everyone who has followed this series this far, either on Reddit or through the YouTube channel Karma Comment Chameleon. You have been so generous with your support, encouragement, and kindness. I know I say this a lot, however, it never feels like it's enough. Also, another big shout out to Karma Comment Chameleon and the effort Rob dedicates to bringing these stories to a wider audience. The fact that someone would deem these stories worthy of such effort is gratifying beyond what words can express. OP, I just want to mention that your stories are so well written, and from the comments that I'm seeing on the previous ones, people are sitting on the edges of their seats waiting for the next one. You have a way with words, and we thank you for all the time that you're putting into these stories and keeping us entertained. Back to the story. And so, what so many of you have been waiting for, let's get into Kevin in a Big Rig Part 7, Flashpoint. Backstory. These events take place over the span of a couple of days immediately following the events in Part 6, Breakdown. The 3-day breakdown had forced dispatch to call in another truck to rescue the load. I had figured as much since the load was considered high priority, and with an even more serious winter storm than what we faced in Nebraska bearing down on us, dispatch wanted to get the load to its destination as soon as possible. That left myself, first Kevin, a repaired truck, an empty trailer, and precious little time before we became stranded again by Old Man Winter. Almost as soon as we get the truck out of the shop from first Kevin's fiasco on Snoqualmie, dispatch sends us a load. It was to pick up in Lewiston, Idaho that same evening and deliver in Chicago. I was relieved as this put us heading away from the storm and, with luck, would keep us ahead of it. When I plotted the route, however, I was abruptly reminded that while the patron saint of truckers might protect those who call upon him, he also has a very morbid sense of humor. Lewiston is a mountain town along the Washington-Idaho border. From where we began, it would take the better part of a day traveling through remote areas with little chance of assistance if something were to happen. And because I hadn't suffered enough, the only way into Lewiston was along US 95 and down another steep mountain grade. That was worse than Snoqualmie. How bad? Well, if Snoqualmie was a black diamond ski slope, Lewiston would be a triple black diamond, skull and crossbones level, and require a signed waiver of liability and clearance from a psychiatrist. And just for kicks, first Kevin would be driving us there. Upon realizing this, I texted my mom, told her I loved her, and that I was probably going to be dead in the next few hours. She thought I was drunk. For the first few hours, I stayed in the bunk trying to get what little sleep I could. First Kevin's horrendous driving did not help matters, as I was constantly being woken up by my head being slammed into a cabinet by his excessive braking. I finally had to use my jacket as a makeshift cushion and keep my head from suffering a concussion. The truck drove on and on and on. Sleep, when it came, was fitful and fleeting. The jarring of the brakes and the whine of the over-revving engine foretold of an impending fate so terrifying as to make Edgar Allan Poe wet the bed and Stephen King buy a nightlight. As the sky grew dark and the cold air began to bite, I decided I had slept as much as I could, pulled on my boots, and went up front. I looked out of the windshield and saw what I had been dreading, the warning sign for the steep drop into Lewiston. The highway on which we made the descent was also the town's main thoroughfare, fall off the cliff, roll into town. Any loss of control here and a lot of people besides us would more than likely be killed. I just hoped that if I did die that night, it was quick, painless, and first Kevin would join me so I could beat his butt for all eternity. First Kevin started down the grade, picking up speed too fast at first, but thanks to being empty, speed control was much easier. Still adamantly opposed to engine brakes, he maintained his speed through downshifting and heavy braking, much like he had attempted to do on Snoqualmie. When he finally managed to stabilize his speed, I lit a cigarette because I think all people doomed to die deserve one last smoke. But it wasn't my last smoke or my last day on Earth. Despite everything, First Kevin managed to get the truck down the mountain and into the town without it ending in a fiery crash. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding and take a long drag of my cigarette to calm my nerves. We were safe for the time being. First Kevin manages to get us to the pickup, after getting lost of course, and we change out while we are being loaded. I sit down in the driver's seat and program the route into my GPS. Getting back to the interstate was going to be tougher, I saw, as it was more remote wilderness, mountainous terrain, and little chance of help in an emergency. Adding to the difficulty was the fact that the storm we were desperately trying to outrun was catching up to us. Fortunately, it wasn't long before we get fully loaded and head to a local truck stop to top off the tanks, since it was nearly 150 miles to the nearest truck stop. I refuel the truck while First Kevin goes inside the store. After several minutes, both fuel tanks are filled and First Kevin is still inside doing God knows what. I pull the truck out of the fuel pumps and pull around to the parking area. I dash inside, grab some food, drinks, and smokes, and come back to the truck to find First Kevin still isn't back yet. I begin to fantasize about what's keeping him. Stroke, brain aneurysm, abducted by aliens. They do tend to take the dumbest people after all. But alas, the hope was fleeting, as I soon see him hobbling his way across the parking lot towards the truck, carrying a plastic bag and looking like a hobo about to ask for $1. First Kevin opens the passenger door and climbs inside. "Hey mother effer," he yelled angrily, "why'd you move the truck?" I point at the "all trucks proceed to parking when fueling complete" signs hanging near the diesel pumps. "Because I can read, peckerhead," I reply. "You know I have a bad leg, it hurts to walk that far. Do that again and I'll kick your ass," he threatens weakly. If you recall in part 2, I mentioned I was at least 1 foot taller and 100 pounds heavier than First Kevin, so his threat was more comical than menacing. "Oh really?" I reply. "You wouldn't lift a foot above my knees before I rip that gimp leg off and beat you to death with it. Sit the F down and shut up." He mumbled something, but I didn't hear him as I released the brakes and pull out of the parking lot. The climb up the mountain was slow and painstaking. Snow was just starting to fall, but not yet heavy enough to be a serious concern. First Kevin, riding shotgun, was grumbling about his leg, the cold, and whatever else he felt like complaining about. I get to the top of the hill and press on, trying like hell to stay in front of the storm. First Kevin remained up front, though he had moved past griping and onto bragging about his future plans. Apparently, he had high aspirations for his trucking career. In a few months, he was going to become a lead driver, the title the company gave to driver trainers, and work his students like a racial slur. His words, not mine. He also planned on becoming an independent contractor by leasing a truck through the company and making a lot more money. This would also allow him to run a little side business with his nephew, who, according to First Kevin, was some major player in prison in some specific hate group. He claimed his nephew could set him up running contraband out of Mexico. I paid very little attention to him, as I'm more concerned about the winter storm that is almost on top of us. We start going down a hill. Nothing serious, but enough that I take my foot off of the accelerator. I never trust cruise control in a semi. This causes the engine brakes to engage, and on cue, First Kevin takes it personally. "If you were my student," he said, trying to sound pretentious, "I'd fail you for that." What the F ever, man. At least I can go 5 minutes without getting lost, I reply, not missing a beat. "Don't use those things on my truck," he demands. "I'm not, dumbbutt," I shoot back. "This is the company truck, remember?" Just then, we start down another hill, this one a bit longer but not overly steep. Again, I release the accelerator and the engine brakes re-engage. This was apparently the last straw for First Kevin. He reaches down, unbuckles his seatbelt, and reaches over towards the steering wheel. The activation button for the engine brakes is on the right side of the steering wheel. I see his hand and slap it away. "Cut it out, peckerhead," I tell him. He tries again, this time getting out of the seat and towering over me while reaching for the engine brake button. This is extremely dangerous as it's dark, we're on a narrow road, and visibility is reduced because of the snow. I don't have the luxury of handling this diplomatically, so I grab him by the shirt with my right hand and literally throw him back into the passenger seat hard enough that his head bounces off the window. If you ever pull a stunt like that again, I tell him, I will break every bone in your body and leave you to the buzzards. You're not a lead driver, and this is not your truck. Sit down, buckle up, and shut up. First, Kevin obviously hadn't expected that reaction. Apparently, he was living in a fantasy universe where he was the trainer and I was the student. I suppose that knock to the head was enough to bring him back to reality, or as close as he could get, since he buckled his seatbelt and went about copying the company route to his precious notebook. A couple of hours pass in silence. The snow begins to fall heavier and accumulate on the ground and stick to the road. The wind had begun to pick up and was rocking the truck side to side. It felt like an eternity since we had seen the last town, car, or even abandoned building. I had just started to begin thinking that maybe we hadn't survived the downgrade into Lewiston, and this was my own personal hell, when far in the distance, I see the lights of a town. I check the GPS, and sure enough, it's exactly where we are to rejoin Interstate 90. I was less excited about being on the interstate as I was about the prospect of finding shelter from the approaching storm. As we make our way through town, I keep my eyes peeled for a truck stop, Walmart, gas station, anything that might offer a safe harbor for the night. But to my increasing dismay, nothing. To make matters worse, the town appeared to be deserted. Even the 24-hour convenience stores were dark and empty. Suddenly, a few miles before reaching the interchange, a message comes across the computer. First, Kevin takes the computer and reads it. It's a weather alert, he says. It says we have to shut down. Of course, I say, still looking for somewhere to park and finding nothing. Keep an eye out for a truck parking spot. We get closer to the interstate and find nothing. Even the gas stations with truck diesel lanes are clearly posted, no truck parking. My only alternative is to get back on the interstate and keep going until I find somewhere to shut down. I'll admit, this is the last thing I wanted to do, but my hands were tied. First Kevin, however, simply could not understand the situation. Why are you getting on the interstate, he asked. Safety told us to shut down. Yeah, but there's nowhere to shut down, I reply. You have to stop, he insists. Safety will write you up. Where? On the side of the city highway? You really think that's a good idea, Jackbutt? Looking back, I now see how ironic this question was. First, Kevin gave up. Apparently being thrown bodily against a window one-handed takes away your nerve. Well, if safety says anything, it's on you, he says. I'm fine with that, and I'll tell them the same thing I'm telling you. You can't just stop in the middle of the effing road. I take the on-ramp to Interstate 90 eastbound. I keep my speed at around 45 miles per hour, 72 kilometers per hour. Since knowing we shouldn't be out here according to safety, I can at least use the fact that I was driving at a greatly reduced speed to say, yeah, I know, I should be shut down, but there's nowhere to shut down, so I have to keep going until I find a place to shut down. I plod along Interstate 90 through the Idaho Panhandle and find nowhere to park. The truck computer is going crazy, dinging every few minutes with messages, wanting to know why we are traveling through a shutdown area. I can't send any reply since I'm driving, and First Kevin is content to let me deal with it. I drive well into Montana before I see Salvation, a truck safety rest area. It's a little more than a super wide shoulder on the side of the highway, but it's reasonably safe, legal for us to use, and, more importantly, it has enough room for us to get into. I guide the truck into a parking spot, shut off the headlights, and pick up the computer. I put myself off duty and go about responding to the messages. All but one are automated messages about the shutdown notice and the fact we are operating in one. The one non-automated message is from the night dispatcher. You are operating inside of a shutdown area? Please shut down as soon as possible, the message asked. What the hell did you think I was planning, Peckerhead? I said to the screen. I reply, could not find safe and legal parking spot when alert received. was forced to continue on until a safe and legal parking area could be found. We are now shut down. Intentionally used the words safe and legal in my reply because, according to the company's own driver handbook, a truck that receives a weather shutdown notice must find a safe and legal place to shut down until the notice is lifted. That was their own policy verbatim. I was just following it, safe and legal. I decided to go back to the bunk and sleep. It was pretty obvious we were going nowhere until morning at least. The next morning, I'm awakened by the sound of the truck brakes releasing. I jump out of my bunk and check the computer. Safety had released the shutdown and implemented a 45-mile-per-hour limit for the area. First, Kevin took it upon himself to take the first shift, so I crawled back into the bunk. A couple of hours later, I'm woken up by my phone ringing. I check it, unknown number, but the area code matches the company headquarters, so I answer. Hello, I answer. Hi, is this OP? Driver ID 9876, replied the voice. Yeah. This is Ken, not real name, from safety. This call is being recorded. We had a report that you willfully violated a mandatory shutdown area last night. Son of a bee. First, Kevin tried to turn me into safety after the stunt he pulled with the engine brakes. Well, Ken, I reply, I suppose that depends on your definition of violated. Did you continue to drive after receiving a notice of the shutdown? Yes, I answer truthfully. Can you explain why? Well, Ken, if you refer to company driver handbook, such and such page, such and such paragraph, you will see that it clearly states that, and I quote, upon receiving a shutdown alert, the driver must park the truck as soon as it is safe and legal to do so, end quote. Now, as I told the night dispatcher, I was not in an area that provided safe and legal parking, and therefore was forced to continue on until safe and legal parking could be found. However, I was well aware of the dangerous road and weather conditions and elected to proceed at a speed no faster than 45 miles per hour, 72 kilometers per hour, and shut down at the nearest safe and legal place available. For a few moments, Ken was quiet, but I heard the telltale tapping of a computer keyboard through the phone. I see. Well, looking at your route, I see that there was very little in the way of parking or facilities. No crap, Sherlock, I think to myself. That was my assessment of the situation as well, I confirm. Well, he continued, we received this report from an anonymous phone call and we had to follow it up. Anonymous my butt. Am I being written up for this? Not at this time, since, as you say, you were trying to get to a safe, legal parking area. We may look into this matter further at a later time. However, I would like to stress that you take care in the future. I manage to hide my rage when I respond, always do, thanks, and hang up. For a few moments, I stared at the bunk ceiling in furious disbelief. Anonymous phone call? Yeah, that was BS, since there was only one person who knew I had driven at that time who would have made a phone call. First, Kevin, the rat fink bee, had tried to grass me up on the sly. Only he made one critical mistake. He underestimated me. I knew the safety policy, apparently better than the safety department themselves, and I had probably saved my job and career by doing so. No doubt the little crap thought he'd won by his little butt-kissing exhibition, and he would no doubt try again when he realized it didn't work. But he wouldn't get that chance. Oh no, run game on me, little man, and I'll show you how it's played. I open my phone's email app and go to the saved email draft I had been preparing for so long. I attach the photos of the computer logs, double check for missing issues, add in about the incident where he tried to grab the steering wheel while I was driving, and plug in the email address of the relevant department heads. I also make one addition to the end of the email, letting them know that, seeing as how the issue was habitual and ongoing, I would continue to provide daily updates via email on First Kevin's infractions and unsafe actions. Why email, you wonder? Well, in the eyes of the law, an email is considered an official document. By using email, I could use it as proof that I communicated the issue to the company. If the situation progressed to the point where legal action became necessary, the emails could be used as evidence that the company was made aware of the issue, but did nothing. That is negligence. I knew it, and they should know it too, I thought. Well, they claim to put safety first, so let's see. I give the email a final once-over. It's ready, I think. I move my thumb up to the send icon and freeze. For a moment, a tiny voice of doubt pipes up. Is this the right thing to do? You could put yourself in the firing line with this. Even if you pull it off, it could ruin First Kevin's life. Is what he did so bad to really be worth that? For a moment, I almost consider not going through with it. Just ask for a new co-driver, and that thought was interrupted by my forehead banging off the cabinet again. First Kevin and his piss poor driving. Never mind, I tell myself decisively, F this butthole, and hit send. There was the slightest bit of regret when I saw the status of the email change from sending to sent. Oh well, too late now. No turning back. The missiles were in the air. Nothing left to do but wait. And that concludes part 7 Flashpoint. As always, I want to thank each and every one of you for all your kind support and encouragement over the past couple of weeks. It means more to me than you will ever know. Also, if you haven't been listening to YouTube channel Karma Comment Chameleon, Rob does an excellent job retelling these stories and is well worth your time. I hope to have part 8 posted later this week. Until then, my friends, remember, friends don't let friends become Kevins. OP, what the hell, man? You're leaving us with another cliffhanger? Oh, come on. So I'll be sitting here refreshing Reddit over and over and over until the next one is posted because I want to know what happens with that darn email. OP, I love your writing style, but why'd you do this to us? Come on. Make sure to check out OP at the link in the description down below for part 7. Let him know that KCC sent you and just how much you're appreciating these stories. I know I am, and I'll be commenting over there myself. Thanks for watching, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.